Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the time and money of going the full-on sex therapist route versus my pleasure psych intimacy coach certification program. So I'm going to put the end goal at the top, because really that's what we want to talk about. What is our end goal? Our end goal is to transform the sex, relationship, intimacy lives of others, right? So I'm just going to write help others with their sex lives. Okay, so first we're going to look at my route, and I'm going to use a different color. We'll use red for how long it took me, and then green for how much it cost me. Okay, so we'll start with the time in 1990 was when I graduated high school, and I went to college. So I started college in 1990. We'll put that here. And then this was 5 years. It took me 5 years to get my bachelor's degree. And it cost me, back then it was, I went to a California state school, I was a California resident, and so it was fairly inexpensive compared to how much it costs now. But it was about $500 a semester times 10 semesters. So about $5,000, but there was some summer schools thrown in there. So let's say maybe 3 summers. So $5,000, $6,500 for my undergrad degree. That's pretty cheap for a bachelor's degree, but mind you, that was 1990. In 95, I graduated, and in 95, I graduated, and I had a bachelor's degree at this point in psychology, and I started working as a counselor. Well, I was actually technically a job coach. Interesting, right? I was a coach. I was a job coach. I was working with developmentally disabled adults in their vocational settings. Basically, I would get on the bus. I was living in San Francisco, so everything was bus and public transportation. I would ride the public transportation with them to their job sites, where I would sort of like supervise them, manage them, be their like go-between between their boss, and sort of help them develop socially appropriate skills in the workplace. I made $24K a year. To make ends meet, because I was living in San Francisco, which wasn't a very expensive place at the time, I also had to work another job, which we're going to put in blue. And that other job was waiting tables. And I would take home tips from waiting tables of about $200 a month, a night, a weekend. Per weekend, which is another $800 a month. This was almost the same amount I was making as with my bachelor's degree as a job coach. So very similar amounts of money. 800 times 12 is what? 9K a year waiting tables. 9.6 or something to that effect. Just in tips alone. Mind you, I was making a little bit more, but in order to make ends meet, I had to have 2 jobs. Well, I decided to leave that job, leave that world, and join the world of tech, which we'll put in brown. Actually, we'll put it in blue, since it's another. So from 1997 till about 2002, I worked in tech. I moved to LA, and I worked in tech as a production assistant producer, and then I moved up to production manager, producer and production manager. Now, I didn't have any training in that, didn't have to go to college for that, and I was making, my starting salary was, I think it was about 65 per year. I mean, that's just a jump just to begin with. Well, what ended up happening was I was like, I don't want to work in corporate. Don't want to work in corporate anymore. Too corporate. So what does too corporate mean? Too corporate was 9 to 5, sitting in a cubicle, sometimes longer than 5 o'clock, sometimes 6 o'clock, sometimes 7 o'clock, working for somebody else, constantly being stuck to a desk or a computer or being barked orders at. It just sucked the life out of me. I was so uninspired. And then it's like you end and you get up and you do the same thing again, right? It's just this long cycle that never ever ends, and my soul was just like crunching under it. I didn't really even have time for me. It didn't even seem like I existed in that equation. Because yes, I could play my music and write my books and be creative after work on the weekends. And of course I did naturally, I tried to do those things because they've always been very important to me, but they somehow fell flat. There wasn't a lot of, they weren't integrated with the work in any way. So it just felt like the life was getting sucked out of me. So that's what I mean when I say too corporate. So at the age of 30, I decided to go back to graduate school because I was told that once you get licensed as a therapist, you will no longer make $24K. You can now, your salary is going to increase probably 3 times. I'm like, great. So once I get my graduate degree, I'll be able to make the $65K that I was making in tech, but I don't want to work in corporate. I want to work doing something social, doing social service, something that feels a little bit better. So I'm going to move this down here. In 2002, I decided to go back to get my master's in clinical psychology. And we'll put that here. That cost me, this is a fun number, that cost me about $49,000. Okay, so we've got this, which wasn't too high. Then we've got really, really low salary. And then I made a little bit more money doing a shitty job I hated. Oh, I gotta add, this was working 9 to 5 and then some. I would say about 60 hours a week as a producer in tech. So, does that sound fun? Does that sound creative to you? It didn't. So I actually went back to school thinking I could have this much more creative, much more like social, exciting, feel-good life. But guess what? I graduated in 2004 with $49,000 in debt. So now I have my master's degree, but in order to become a licensed therapist, so I've got this huge debt. Now, in order to become a licensed therapist, I now need to do 3,000 hours. 3,000 supervised hours under the supervision of someone. Now, I got lucky. I found an internship in South LA at a foster family agency where I got to drive around to foster homes, and I got to counsel the kids and their families in their homes. And that job at the time paid me $35K. That's after my master's, but it's pre my license. So you see, we're looking at 2002, we're looking at about 7 years later, 94, 2004, 95, 2000, about 9 years later, I'm making $10,000 more. Now I have another degree. So then I decide to finish my hours and study for the exam. And guess what? I get licensed as a therapist. Yay, I got my license. So we'll put that here, licensed as a therapist. And at this point, my agency job tells me they'll give me a raise. So I actually moved to a different agency at this point, making $41K. As a licensed therapist who is $49,000 in debt and has been in school for 5 years. 5 years plus, so we've got 5 years plus 2 years here, plus another, I took the exam in 2006, so another 2 years here. So we've got, this was actually, this was about 2.5 years. So we've got 2 plus 2.5 is 4.5 plus 5, which is now 9.5 years of school. And I'm making $41,000. Does that track? It was really, really difficult. It broke my heart. That's when I decided I had to go into private practice and work for myself. So I'm gonna take this, I just wanted you to see this, I'm gonna move to a new sheet of paper. Starting my private practice. I got my license, it was January of 2007, so I opened my private practice in 2007. So I'm putting this on here because I really enjoyed working in private practice. And 2021, 22, we're in 2022. So I've been in private practice for 15 years at this point. So 9.5 years of schooling and then another 15 years in private practice. During private practice, initially I worked for myself while I was working at the agency, and slowly I started going part-time at the agency, and I was, building my practice. So what I did though is I was still working full-time at this point because I was doing part-time at the agency and then part-time building my caseload in private practice, right? The thing that is really important here is my mentality was 40-hour work week. Everything that I had learned that they taught me was 40-hour work week. So I was doing this, and by the time I realized, I no longer needed the agency anymore, it was probably around, 2010, 2011, I'll put that on here. I was able to leave the agency. So here I'm doing full-time private practice, okay? And it's great. I've got associates that are working under me. I'm making good money, but I am still working 40 hours plus. Why? Because I was accepting insurance. So I had a full caseload, but I was accepting insurance, and insurance filled me up. But it's still the same concept over here. You're trading hours for dollars. So I was making, like $95 per hour. But in order to make a good living, I needed to work at least 30 hours a week. Because remember, I still have a $49,000 debt to pay off, right? I still have that debt to pay off. So I've got to work a lot. But I was doing sex therapy, right? Sex therapy, do you know how much a sex therapist charges? Sex therapy, you can charge $200 and up. Some sex therapists are charging $400, it just depends. So $200 and up for sex therapy, I'm making $95 an hour, working 30 hours a week, just try to pay this debt off, just to keep my head afloat and above water. And at a certain point I realized that if I get off of the insurance panels and become a cash only practice, I was going to make more money. So, but before I learned that, I'll tell you what happened in 2014. I burnt out. I closed my practice. I moved to New York City. And Burnout, moved to New York City, and guess what happened in New York City? I learned that, I'm going to move this down here, I could do the same thing that I was doing as a therapist, but as a coach. because my license limited me to the state of California. So here I am working for this system, paying it off. I can only work in the state of California. I can accept insurance, which is keeping me stuck in this cycle, because I spent all of this time and money going to school to get an education. So that kept me stuck in this cycle. So I could maintain my license, which costs about $200 a year. I have to take CEUs, which CEUs can cost you about $1,000 a year. I have to have my CAMFT membership, which is the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, which is about $200 a year. These are just some of the minimal costs. On top of that, one of the things that I do is I hire therapists in my practice to help offload some of I have a very busy practice, which is a nice thing that has come out of all this work, to offload some of that to give our clients some more opportunities and different therapists to work with. I have associates that work underneath my license. Those associates can only be in the state of California. I have to work within the bounds of state of California, and that has limited my entire career. So when I moved to New York City, I started working as a coach. I was doing the exact same thing, helping others with their sex lives. I was charging $200 an hour. I was working out of state. I was traveling. I went to Europe. I went to St. Martin for our friend's wedding. I went to Puerto Rico. I went to the Dominican Republic. I was living in New York. I wasn't even living in California, and I was making more money. And that's when I realized, that's also when I got my book deal. That's also when I was making my documentary film. I also went to New York City to record an album, and I realized that this was keeping me stuck. It was keeping me away from the creative things that I love to do, because I was working 40 hours a week, so the music that I play was happening late at night. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was exhausted, which this was bound to happen in the system. You know, it took me a long time to walk away from that model, though, because, you know, walking away from the agency was hard. You know, I kind of ran through it really fast, but during those years when I was working in an agency and working in my private practice, and I was going down to part-time at my agency so I could increase my caseload, but there were times where I was like still kind of working like 25, 30 hours at my agency, and maybe seeing 15 clients at my private practice. Like and 15 clients is good. Like that's almost a full caseload, but I couldn't let go of that agency. Like I couldn't let go of that security, that paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, the knowledge of that paycheck. Like it was really scary to leave that like consistent paycheck world. That was really, that was the first time that it was really scary. And when I finally did it, it was because I had to. I was just burnt out. The second time I did it, though, was even harder, because now I was not working in an agency. I was working for myself 100%, but I was still seeing those insurance clients. And that's kind of a consistent check, because when clients have insurance, you know that they're going to show up week after week after week, because they're not having to shell $200, $300 out of their pocket. And that keeps us stuck. That keeps our clients stuck. That is a whole other topic, and I've actually done a sex talk on how insurance keeps our clients actually stuck too, because they don't have to shell out money to do this therapy thing. So it's less of an impact for them. So they're stuck, and simultaneously I was stuck too. We get stuck when we see insurance clients unless we're really, really clear about where the therapy is going, what we're working on, you know, and in that process, I really was not able to do the work that I love. But I tell you what, leaving insurance behind was so hard. I had a full caseload, working all by myself, right? I didn't have to rely on anyone. The clients were consistent. And I got up in the morning and I worked 8 hours a day, and I came home and made, decent money, and I was working all for myself. But insurance is like being part of a regulatory board too. Like, you've got to do this, you've got a ton of paperwork. Sometimes you've got to call insurance companies and chase down checks because they didn't get the claim, or they didn't, there is so much work for half the amount of money. So I got stuck again. Like, the times I've gotten stuck in my life, I kid you not, it's because I was afraid to take that leap. I was afraid to let go of my security, my safety net. And I finally started realizing you can, but it took me so long to do that. And the moment for me was when I would be sitting in session with my clients, and I just wanted to rip my hair out. I remember sitting in a session with a client who I liked. They'd been coming to me for maybe 2 years consistently because insurance was paying for that. I had consistent checks coming, and I wanted to pull my hair out. So here I am, I'm working for myself, I've done all these things that I said I was gonna do. Get out of the rat race, get out of working for someone else, get out of corporate America, get out and work for myself and be in charge of my own destiny and work from home or work from wherever I wanted to work. And I was still pulling my hair out. I was still crying. Sometimes when I would come home at night, I would want a drink and do lots of drugs because I had to just sit there and listen to my clients vent and talk about things that weren't my passion. They weren't what I got into private practice to do, because I was still trying to pay this thing off. Accepting insurance, a lot of those insurance clients are not the people that I want to serve. So I'm getting people that have depression, people that have anxiety, maybe they're struggling with their work, maybe they are struggling with their relationship, but what I really wanted to do was help others with their sex lives, and I'm not really doing it when I'm accepting insurance. Sure, people come in and saying that that they have issues with their relationship or with their sex lives or with non-monogamy or one of the various things that I treat. But inevitably, they don't have to pay anything out of pocket with insurance. Maybe a small copay of $15, $5. So they get stuck in therapy, and we're talking about stuff that's not what I'm super passionate about. What am I super passionate about? I'm super passionate about helping people with their sex lives. Like helping people embrace non-monogamy or helping people uncover their sexual fluidity. Like, I love that, because to me that's living authentically. That's what I was put on this planet to do, is to help people really embrace their sexual fluidity and understanding of each other in relation to each other, their sexuality, embracing pleasure. That is what I thrive in, and that's what I love to do. And when I was seeing insurance clients, I wasn't able to do that. So while I was working full-time and making decent money, I was totally not living my purpose at all. So it was, again, I was reaching that point of burnout again. Here I am. I've already told you I burnt out in 2014 when I moved to New York. Well, here I was again, seeing insurance clients and about to burn out again. And I had to make a decision that I have to stop seeing insurance clients. And that wasn't an easy decision to make. So that's really what my program is about. It's so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes I made. I understand that that could be potentially really scary to take that big leap. And I can't sit here and tell you that that's what you have to do. I don't know anything about your life, what your debts are like, what your finances are like. But what I do know is that if something doesn't feel right, there's probably a solution for it. And my program hopes to help you find that solution. So I will let you know that I finally paid that student loan off in 2020. So we put this here, 2020, 6 years after I moved to New York and started coaching, and raising my rates and started offering programs, I was able to not only pay off my loans, but also could start to play music, which we'll do in black. Music, writing. I got my book deal. I'm writing my 5th book now. It's 2022 and I just got another book deal. I'm writing my 5th book. We're recording another album. I live in Portland, Oregon now, where it's beautiful and green and it rains, so I don't have to be stuck in LA 365 days out of the year where it's a little bit too hot for me. I get to travel. I pretty much get to do what I want, all because I moved to New York City in 2014 and started coaching. So the reason I went through this long video to show you all of that is because that's what my Pleasure Psych certification program allows you to do, is skip all of that and get to here without that, so that you can help others with their sex lives, travel, play music, write, whatever it is that you want to do with your life. You'll have time. I only see clients about 5 or 6 hours at this point. And I get to do all of the other things that I want. The amount of time that I spend on my practice and my coaching business, I still have a private practice. I still do therapy. I just don't work within the medical model anymore. And I spend about 15 hours a week doing all of that, and the rest of the time is mine to do as I wish. It's not to say that I don't get up and work every morning. It's not to say that sometimes work stresses me out. All of those things happen. There are ways that we can deal with those though, and I've learned all the tools, and I've also realized that playing music, writing, traveling informs my work as a coach, informs my work that I do, and also helps me combat my burnout. So that's what I kind of teach in my Pleasure Psych Intimacy Coaching program. And if you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask more questions.